listen to the universe because I didn't. The reason why I stopped being a nanny was because I got hit by that car. When you're an eldest daughter, there's so much pressure put on us. I had this ultimatum by one of my parents who said, you can either stay here and get a job and help me raise your siblings, or you can leave. And I said, I'm going to leave. My unpopular decision is that I am child free and that I have rejected the eldest daughter syndrome.
Let's be honest, life would be a whole lot easier if it came with a spreadsheet or a checklist. Do this by 25, achieve this by 40. But we all know life doesn't work that way. This is Unpopular Decisions, where we talk about what it really takes to stop following the script. I'm your host, Jameelah Calhoun. At some point, a lot of us realize the life we were taught to want isn't actually ours. I'm joined by Molly Gazay, an actress, writer, and producer who made the decision to prioritize her own healing and happiness over having children. As an eldest daughter and a former nanny, she spent years taking care of everybody else until she decided that she didn't want to define her life by that role. In a society where women are pressured to be selfless, nurturing, and self-sacrificing, we talk about what it really means to be self-actualized and why eldest daughters deserve to give themselves grace. Let's get into it. Molly, thank you so much for being on Unpopular Decisions. I've been so excited and anticipating this conversation. But before we get too far in, can you tell our audience what your unpopular decision is?
So I have two. So my unpopular decision is that I am child free and that I have rejected the eldest daughter syndrome.
Ooh, okay. I'm an eldest daughter as well. So that one hit home. But maybe before we dive in, what does eldest daughter syndrome mean to you?
So eldest daughter syndrome to me I didn't really understand what it was for the longest time. And I was watching this YouTube video, as we all love to do, stumbled upon it. And it was, this really put together, buttoned up, seal the emotions, making sure that you're in charge of everybody all the time, take caregiving a lot, putting yourself last, almost last, lots of giving, and just like really not understanding your identity outside of helping others. And so that was for me really, I watched this video and I'm like sobbing. And it's funny because I had just messaged a friend after and he goes, oh yeah, I've been waiting for you to see something like this, because he's like, you totally have this.
Wow.
It was wild. And, like I've done more research and digging into it. And it's just like everything from when you're an eldest daughter, there's so much pressure. There's so much pressure put on us. That pressure kind of builds and it can create anxiety. It creates rifts in family dynamics for it. At least it has for me. And really, especially for me and my sisters, it's created this deep rift where I was always kind of second mom. So we never really got to be sisters. And so now we're really working on reversing that. But it's hard, man. It has been very hard for them and it's been very hard for me.
I can so relate. I'm just curious though, what is the age distribution for you and your siblings?
There are 6 of us, so there's a lot. I have an older half brother, and then I think the youngest just in April now turned, I want to say 34.
Okay.
So I'm 40. I'm very happy about it. There's a 6-year gap. So it's really kind of a short window. There are 4 girls and 2 boys.
Wow. Okay. That is a big family. So I know even what I went through was nothing compared to this. So for myself, I have twin sisters. There is a 9-year age gap. So I was significantly older. And yes, that meant the school drop-offs and taking them to their field hockey practices and everything else. But I mean, with a ton of, a lot more kids, I just know your mom really needed the help. So I can just imagine the responsibilities were even more for you.
Yeah. And we were poor. There's no nannies. that's not, I'm the nanny. You're the nanny, like you're taking care of them. And like, I think that was the biggest thing that really affected me when I was younger. Cause I was told if they get in trouble, you get in trouble. And so it was so much pressure to keep them in line and be kind of like this they used to call me militant Molly because of how rigid and strict I was. It's, it just creates these really weird relationships that are not like, I tell somebody else about that relationship and they're like, that doesn't, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, how does that work?
I can completely relate with the idea of militant Molly. I think my sisters would always talk about how I yelled at them for putting on their seatbelts every time I drove them anywhere. But that means, yeah, you have to rebuild your relationship with your siblings to be more of that peer to peer relationship as you get older. But there's also like weird dynamics with your family. Like you're used to, being relied upon. And so you come to see your parents as peers, actually. So I'm just curious about the relationship you had with your parents and whether or not you, as a parentified child, kind of started to see them in a completely different light.
For me, it was, yeah, it was, I kind of equated myself when I was younger to Cinderella because I was always cleaning, cooking, taking care of the house, the kids, the dogs, the cats, anybody and everybody. And for the longest time, up until I literally had a conversation with my parents, I was their therapist. So they would come to me with their problems. They would talk to me about each other. But it would get to a point where one of my parents would be coming into my room sobbing, and we would have a conversation about them and their emotions. And I had to figure out how to regulate myself while also get them back to a point where they could function normally again. And I don't know how it worked in your family, but that was pretty consistent from the time that I was a preteen until I started kind of rejecting that in my my early 20s.
Woof. The idea of you thinking of yourself as Cinderella, oh, my heart like kind of breaks for that. But yeah, there are absolutely elements that I can relate to being the support system for your parents who come to you complaining about adult things happening in their life or in their relationship. But yeah, I mean, at least it sounds like as you kind of got older, we're pushing into your 20s that you realize that this is not the way it should be going. Tell me about that transformation for you. But at that stage, what did you think you wanted for yourself? What did you want for your career? And how did you think about the life that you wanted to build?
It was hard. It was hard. It was very hard for me to leave. We moved around a lot. I was very emotionally connected to my siblings. I was terrified to leave them alone, which is also another symptom of eldest daughter syndrome. I used to when we would do sleepovers, I would sleep in their rooms with them, watching them sleep to make sure that they were still breathing. Recently seeing something on a YouTube show about eldest daughter syndrome and this therapist talking about that. And she's like, that is not normal. And I was like sobbing because I'm like, I did that all the time because I was terrified something bad was going to happen to them. Someone was going to come into the room. The hard part was leaving them because I had to go to college. And I had this ultimatum by one of my parents who said, you can either stay here and get a job and help me raise your siblings, or you can leave. And I said, I'm going to leave. I didn't know where I was going to go. I didn't know what I was going to do. So I moved out, and I moved in with a boyfriend at the time. And yeah, one of my sisters and I would just constantly fight. You left us, you abandoned us, you need to be here, this, like just going on and on and on. And it killed me. It was like literally listening to, and they're not my child, but at the time it was like listening to my child begging me to come home. And that's how ingrained it was in all of us. It wasn't just me, and I think that's one of the hard things about eldest daughter syndrome is, it is about us, but it is also very much about the siblings. I've really had to put my boundaries up, but also remember that muscle that they have to consistently come back, or whatever capacity it is also very much ingrained in them. And I have to have grace to give them to be like, I understand, and not just completely cut it off because I need to emotionally do that.
You shared before that eldest daughter syndrome also has this caretaking dynamic that For myself, I always wanted to be a doctor and nurse when I was in early on in my college career. And so this idea of caregiving is not just in the family system, but, caregiving even in your career. How did that kind of value system and that crave to care for others show up for you in other parts of your life?
Before I left, I got a job at the YMCA. A friend of mine was a director of the arts, and she wanted me to come on. Her name is Christine Bagubi Maldonado. She's amazing. She's an amazing human being. And shout out, Christine. Um, and she hired me to be a teacher or an instructor of the arts. And that turned into a career in childcare. They had offered me other jobs at other locations. And I was like, I'm not going to do this forever. I'm not going to do this forever. I'm in my 20s. This is a means to an end. I would love working with kids, but this is not the road I want to be on. And to go back to one of your questions before, I've always wanted to be an actor, writer, singer. That's what I do now. So I'm very happy about it. Shout out to doing the dream. And at the time I was in my 20s and I was like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to figure out how to make that my job. But because of my eldest daughter brain and being in a constant state of survival and not ever really having an opportunity to sit down and actually thrive, it was always about the survival aspect of things. And so I kept that job and I basically was a nanny until I got hit by a car in 2017. Yeah. A long time of childcare work. That eldest daughter emotional caregiving aspect just went into that. And I always have to really also remind myself like my parents are imperfect and they really needed help. Like we were 6 kids. My dad was a truck driver. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. There was very little to go around. We moved constantly because we were always priced out of locations. I always have to remind myself of that and their trauma and the things that they carry. And that was a part of that.
It's so hard because part of the journey of healing yourself is also recognizing the generational patterns and traumas that really were part of your parents' life. They were experiencing, usually, oftentimes, their own version of being parentified or their own version of, being victimized in different ways when they were coming up. And so, there's part of your own healing that means having grace for them. And it's hard, but ultimately, that's what's part of kind of resetting how we show up in the world and being able to move forward.
The reason why I stopped being a nanny was because I got hit by that car. I'm going to like talk to the camera half the time. I'm a performer. This is what I do. Listen to the universe because I didn't. I got hit by that car. I was with the kid that I was watching. I pushed him out of the way. Shout out to moms and nannies everywhere, powerful, amazing people. One of the nannies grabbed his basket before it fell over. One of the women moms grabbed me by my jacket out of the way as the car hit me. I think it took me about a month to really fully recover. And I was walking home and I saw there was this really bad thing that happened near my house where this mom, she's a Broadway performer. She got hit. Her kids got hit. And it was so, I can't imagine going through that. Like, just a horrible, horrible thing. And I didn't want to leave the house. My husband and my sister took me out to Thai and they sat me down and they said, you need to quit your job. There was just too much. It was just, being hit, watching this happen. And I was like, okay, this is the universe telling me that I need to do this. The day that I quit was April 19th. It's almost coming up. I was sitting at a Starbucks just 2 blocks away from where I'd been hit, getting ready to do my last day. And I was like, fudge. I'm trying not to cuss. Fudge. Maybe I shouldn't quit. I was just like, I don't know. As I'm literally having that thought, a car goes around the corner, a guy gets hit, he bounces off the car. He looks at me while he's on the ground. He pushes himself up, looks at the car, and the guy in the car looks back in here. And I swear I felt like he was looking at me. And I looked at the guy in the car and I said, you did that. I was so mad. Yeah. And I was like, this is the universe telling me, don't think that. And fortunately, that guy was okay. We all went out and made sure he was fine. But like, it was heavy. It's heavy. Like, if you don't listen, sometimes the universe is going to have to beat you over the head. And I'm a Capricorn, so I'm very tough headed. um, so yeah, it was really intense.
Mm. Well, first off, we are so glad that you are okay, that the other gentleman is also okay, and our hearts go out to the family, unfortunately, of the other woman and her children who were hurt. But I think, as you said, this is another example of just we should listen to our hearts. We have to actually take those lessons from the universe when they come to us. But maybe actually, as we are continuing to think about decision making and listening to those signs, maybe this is a good time for us to play our game. Would you rather? And of course, here, just tell us a little bit about why you picked each option. So, first one, would you rather star in a gritty HBO drama or a really chaotic reality show?
Oh, no. HBO, gritty all the way. As soon as you said it, I was like, well, I don't know what else is there, but that's the one. Gritty HBO drama all the way.
Oh my goodness. Okay, another acting one. So, would you rather star as the kind of all over the place, never got their life together friend, think Bridesmaids, or the, overwhelmed, harried, kind of not sure how her life got to this place, mother of five who's questioning all of her life decisions?
I can already tell you the first one. All the way, the first one. I don't know what it is. Maybe like everyone's got a different vibe, but like being so having to be so put together really makes me want to play things that are not that. But it's funny because I always play detectives in procedurals. I always play the hacker tech. I don't know if that's the word. Tech hacker in things, or the mother that is literally trying to keep her family together and everything's falling apart, or sister. So those are like the three I mainly play.
Okay, good. All right, last one then. Would you rather make a decision that's celebrated by society, but your family just totally doesn't accept it and doesn't get it? Or have a decision where your family accepts you and celebrates you, but society judges you instead?
That's hard. Those other two are so easy. I guess it's gonna sound really bad, but I don't know. I mean, I want both, but like if I had to choose, I guess I'd want my family. I don't know. Because the other half of me is like, well, I kind of would like my family too, but I don't know if I could survive like work wise without society as a performer. I would have to say family because that's where I keep leaning. So I'm gonna go with family at the cost. I could be controversial. That's fine. I'm a Capricorn.
Well, it's interesting because, of course, you've mentioned the fact that you are married and intentionally child free, which is, unpopular on both ends most times, both in terms of family and society. Literally, I feel like I see an Instagram post about, someone who's child free being judged like all the time. So, when you thought about your own choice and family plans, who were you most worried about disappointing?
I think it's mostly my mother-in-law because this is why that question was so hard, is that I have never really 100% cared what my family thinks. Not because I don't love them, not because I don't respect them, but at a certain point, being an eldest daughter and being so in charge of my life, I felt like I already had what I needed. I never really got a whole lot of pressure from my family. I had little moments where like my dad would be like, if you had a baby, it wouldn't be so bad. And my mother, when after my husband and I got married, she's like, so when are you having kids? Like literally like the next month. And I was like, no. But like I think my mother-in-law really wants grandchildren. And I think that was like probably the only thing that I felt like, oh, maybe because I love her so much and I didn't want to disappoint her. But at the same time, like I have spent my whole life taking care of kids. My sisters moved here to New York and they still live in around me. And I love them and I love being around them, but there is still that part of me that feels responsible and I'm still trying to disassociate the parental person that I was molded into. I think there's a part of me that would feel like I'm giving it up again to be in the service of. And I would want to give 1,000% to that child. And I just started, even though I'm 40, I just started really understanding who I am as an individual without being the parent, without being in charge and being the person that everyone comes to. And it wasn't until the pandemic and I actually started therapy that I was like, I have to have an identity shift because this identity of the caregiver and the constant stress and anxiety and frustration that I have with not putting my stuff first and feeling constantly burnt out from work and everybody else's emotions, it was so much that I didn't have any identity. I had no identity outside of being the strong worker person, and I don't want to be the worker bee anymore. I want to be the person who works hard but isn't constantly burnt out.
Well, it sounds like you have a beautiful relationship with your mother-in-law. So I can understand that particular pressure. But, I think this decision that you've made is also coming at a very particular time in our society, more at the macro level, whether it's conversations about the birth rate, which is now down to 1.6 children per thousand women, which is the lowest it's ever been. There's also the fact that almost half of all households, couple households, do not have children. And they may eventually, but just in terms of just their current status at any given time. And so I'm curious for yourself, how much of your thought process was really thinking about your own direct family dynamics with your mother in law and your family of origin? Or how much did you ever think about this kind of broader societal conversation around motherhood and traditional family structures?
Might sound kind of weird, but as I've been a surrogate mom to so many kids. Like every child that was in my care was my baby. For me, it's like, yes, the birth rate is going down. Make it easier for women. I'm sorry. If women want to have children, and I'm not opposed to it, I just can't afford it. I can't afford to have a child, have a job, have my extracurricular activities that I want to do, and not make motherhood my entire identity. I know other women who have done it in other countries, but not here in the States. So my hot take on it is make it easier. If you want women to have children, make it easier on us and our partners to be able to have a family. That's one. Two, family, would my family be opposed to it? No. Like, I'm sure my dad would love to, he would probably be so excited, everything like that. Totally understand. But he's not a babysitter. He also needs to have his life and do his thing and be able to function. And my sisters are the same things. I think it really just kind of for me goes back to societal. If you want that, make it easier. Just I'm sorry, that's probably the reason why this is all happening. So it's not because, everyone's just infertile. It's probably, I mean, I'm not a scientist and I don't know the statistics, but I can surmise that at least in the States is probably one of the leading causes.
Right.
So I don't remember what your original question was because I got so upset about that one.
Well, you're so right about society, but for a lot of people, the decision to be child free, people think of it as something that you decide on as a single person, and then you find somebody else who's aligned with that choice. But in your case, it sounds like this was a joint decision with you and your husband. And so I'm just curious about what those conversations really looked and sounded like, as you guys were figuring out what your kind of life would look like together and whether or not a family would be a part of the life that you were building.
When I met Sean, we met in San Francisco, and both of us, which is great because Sean, the thing about me and Sean is that we were completely and totally honest about everything that we felt in that moment. And that's how our relationship is. We are always honest, whether it's frustrating or not, based on our emotions, but we also understand that there are points of views in our emotions. It's not fact. And I think that's why we work so well. So when we had conversations about having children or not having children, it was never like this serious sit down conversation that we need to have. It was always theoretical. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And I just turned 40 in January and it still hasn't. It's not because we decided no. It wasn't because we decided yes. It was just really because it just hasn't happened. And so, as we get older, obviously it gets harder and harder. But I think at this point, and we literally had this conversation yesterday, which is actually funny. He was like, yeah, I just can't imagine us having kids. And I was like, I could see us maybe adopting in the future. And that was like the big thing that we thought of, was like, and I always kind of wanted to adopt anyway, because there are so many kids without families because of whatever reason, or older kids who need support because they don't have it, or whatever the thing is, or even like someone who's older and is like needs a family. I don't think there should be a limit. I think it can go on both sides. I don't know. Like, we're not traditional binary people. And so I think the partner helps because we're both very malleable in that space. Other people, not so much, but us two, we're really good about being fluid.
Well, it sounds like there is some openness now on your part around potentially having children in the future. But I know at the very beginning, when you were coming to the realization about eldest daughter syndrome, that you were like, oh no, like we're not doing that. What do you contribute to helping you kind of come on that journey and kind of come to a place where now there's perhaps some more openness to having children down the line? And especially if there's someone listening who's maybe just realizing that they have eldest daughter syndrome, like what has been partly, helpful for your journey?
I think that eldest daughters need support, and not from the people in your family. And I love my family, but I can't, because that was the system that created the contract that I was not privy to until I realized what I had. And so therapy is huge. Other eldest daughters, if you can't afford therapy, is a great support system, and really talking it out, but also really listening and identifying where you're similar and where you're different. I think those are really helpful tools. YouTube, I call it the University of YouTube, because I have learned so much on YouTube. And I will say, for those of you who are willing to do it, Claude AI. I have done a lot of research just using an AI tool, just being like, hey, I'm pretty sure I have eldest daughter syndrome, blah, 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 blah. Let's kind of talk about this. Those are some really big things. I think also the things that I have learned are understanding that your family is also probably living in a toxic contract. Your parents were living in a toxic contract. You are living in a toxic contract based on their contract. And it's going to be really hard to break that contract and then I felt like I was in this in between space. Like, I didn't have an identity. I didn't know who I was. That was my identity. And so identity shifting was a huge tool. I love Canva. So I used I made a board of what I wanted to be, how I wanted to be seen. One of the big things that I have a problem with, I think, because of being an eldest daughter, is the shotgun effect, which is spread yourself so thin so that you're so good in all these other places, but you don't have a pinpointed identity, because it kind of feels scary. Like, I don't know if you feel that way, but it, to me, I've been paring it down, and it is very scary to be in one lane.
Oh my God, 100%. Like, I always talk about the fact that I just in general have always been motivated and raised to solve for having options, like keep your options open. But there really comes a point where you have to pick a lane and commit to it, and just kind of see that as part of having your own internal compass and allowing you to really understand who you are. Because so many times when you're trying to keep options open or you're being a chameleon and adapting to so many different things, you lose that sense of who you are. And then it's impossible for someone else to actually understand who you are as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Because everything is, I used to hate this box thing. It's like everyone's in a box, but in acting, we have typecasting, and a lot of people don't like that. And so a lot of us, early on are like, oh, I don't want to be typecast. But it's like, no, 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 you want to be typecast. At least if you're in a business, you want to be known for that thing, right? No one's going to be able to look at you and go, oh, this is what I'm going to hire her for, because it's too broad. I don't know if this is a product of eldest daughter syndrome, but it has been something that I have felt is that it's a survival technique. It's not a thriving technique. And I've spent a lot of my life surviving. So that shotgun thing is really a product of survival.
Right. It's scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting you're talking about this idea of being typecast. And of course, you are an actress. And you also mentioned, but previously, this idea of society not really supporting women, especially in terms of being able to have a family, provide for a family, have the right childcare, et cetera. Have you ever thought about whether your decision or kind of experience so far of being child free has really been driven by your career? Is there a version of yourself that maybe pursued a different path that might have actually that you could see yourself actually having had children in that circumstance?
Maybe. I mean, honestly, in real talk, I have a lovely dog. I love him. His name is Ghost, but he is like a 5-year-old. He is technically 5 now, but he is like a toddler, and I would never change adopting him for the world. But it has limited how much, like, especially when he was younger, how much time I could leave the house, because my husband has a full-time job. We really, like, we adopted him during COVID. So there's not like a dog walker or anything like that. All the training, everything fell on us, and I am his predominant caregiver. So I don't spend my entire day out in Manhattan at auditions, going to EPAs and all that stuff. I have to be selective about certain things. And my husband's cousin, who I absolutely love, is like, your dog is more high maintenance than my kids. And I'm like, you're right. And maybe that is a part of my problem, but because I do suffer from major guilt issues with him and leaving him alone for too long. So that's a part of my healing process. I'm not going to blame it all on him. Exactly. I am literally need to get a t-shirt that says that, work in progress. Yeah. But really like a nice fancy one with like skulls and hearts and rainbows. No. But yeah, no, I think that a lot of it has to do with it. And I know people who do it. I have friends who have kids and still act in work and stuff like that. I just don't think that I have the emotional capacity to do it. Yeah. And like I said earlier, I would give 1,000, 10,000% to that kid, and I would get sucked into that lifestyle until they were ready to do their thing. And I've already done it in little, like, 3 years, 5-year spurts. I've already done it. So I'm kind of like at a point where I'm like, well, I don't really feel like I could serve myself, and I don't feel like I could serve the beautiful creature that we would create and be able to do both. I don't know if I have the capacity to do that.
Well, now with my very little acting experience that I've had in your vertical series, part of acting definitely takes a lot of emotional labor. So I'm curious how much that aspect also had an impact on, how much capacity you might have had to potentially have children, because I could just imagine the amount of emotional range that you have to show on set could be also really demanding and exhausting.
Here's the real talk. You don't get paid for about 90% of your work. I have auditions. I'm very, very lucky that I have had so many auditions. I got to travel this year and last year for work doing commercials, which I had to organize to make sure that my husband and my sisters and his dog walker and everybody could help contribute, because again, I work from home most of the time doing other things other than acting. The capacity for that, then there's the Bad Blood Project, which I spend the majority of my time doing all the pre and post work for it, socials, everything. It's like another full-time job. As a just on the performing side, with the amount of auditions that I have weekly, which have slowed down, you're not the only one. If you're listening to this and you're a performer, it's not been great. You're emotionally in turmoil in one, and you're really happy in another, and you're yo-yoing your emotions all the time as a performer. And you're setting your setup, you're tired, but you still have 3 more auditions to do, or you have to smile and sell a product, or you have to be the mom on a network show, and you don't know if you're going to get any of it. And it's a lot of work. And then you're editing it. In the last 6 months, I had this audition. I was so happy. I spent an hour with my coach. I spent an hour with another coach, and then I taped it with another coach. It's a lot. And that's also another, like, it's not just the emotional aspect, but it's the time to make sure that you're prepared for that audition. Everything was recorded on the computer. I was so excited. We went back to look at the tapes. And for some reason, my computer didn't record half of the session. And the best takes are usually at the end. We're all gone. And so that coach and I spent another 30 minutes getting back. Because, there's also the mental, you're like, I just did it. I got it. That one was the one. And you look back and it's technology screwing you. And everything is self-tape now, which is, if you don't know, as a non-performer, it's like this, where I'm looking off to the side of the camera, and then you send the tape into the casting office, and then the casting office sends your tapes, or says, they send your tapes to production, or they don't. But it's all in your apartment. It's not in person. I've done one in-person audition, which I loved this year for a network show. And I was like, yes, please, thank you. Because the energy is so different. So yeah, it's a lot. I mean, like, I know I kind of rambled on, but like, that's what a typical, I would say, working actor, because if you're an actor who is auditioning, you are working, man. You are doing so much. So to put a child in the middle of all that, which, needs so much love and care and attention. And I would never want to, make them feel like they're second to that. That's a lot. It's a lot. And I know women who do it. They are amazing warrior heroes, and I have zero idea how you do it. But like, I don't think I have the emotional capacity. If I hadn't had 30 plus years of taking care of children, maybe it would be different, but it's not.
Well, as you mentioned, there are, it sounds like many people in your community who are acting and have children. Shout out to them. But I can also just imagine this broader challenge of continuing your relationships when you are a couple who is child free, but maybe the rest of your friends all have families. And I also hear from many people this idea that our country and the way our kind of infrastructure is built is still really kind of built around the kind of family unit. So I'm curious, as you've navigated, especially in this season of life, about to turn 40, what has it looked like fitting in to your network and into your community as a couple that's child free?
Well, I'm very lucky because I do have a big mix. And there are a lot of people I know who are child free and are going to be child free, as far as I know. We definitely hang out more than those with children. It hasn't been that bad. It actually has not been lonely, which, I think maybe 20 years or 30 years ago, or definitely 50 years ago, would have been very different. I think that would have been your social network, right? Bringing the kids, having everybody get together. That's what we did when we were kids. We had 3 families that we always hung out with, and everybody brought the kids, and they all went and did stuff in the backyard, and the parents got to sleep or, do whatever they needed to do, hang out. But I think it's different now.
Well, I love hearing that your community has been so inclusive and supportive. So that's wonderful. But I wanted to, as we kind of start to wrap a little bit, circle back as you're thinking about your family system and your sisters also probably now are hitting ages where they might be considering their own family plans. How have all of you guys, as a set of siblings, started to understand your dynamic and change the way that you guys interact?
I have 2 sisters who live here in New York. And the reason why I even got into therapy was because of one of them. And I was like, I don't need therapy. I have friends. It's such an Irish thing to say. I don't need therapy. But they right now, I think, are also healing. And they're in their 30s, they're early and mid 30s. And I think that they're still trying to kind of unravel their contracts. So I think one of them would love to have a child. The other one, I think it's kind of like me. It's like, maybe, like, if it's the right person, the right time, the right place. I have a brother. I have two brothers. Both my brothers, ironically, have children. But the four of us girls do not.
Interesting.
Isn't that an interesting thing?
Well, you're continuing on this journey to trust in your own truth a lot more. And it sounds like that's even having positive impact on your entire family. But as you think about, going forward and the fact that you've just gone through so much, what about that experience are you grateful for? And how do you think it's really shaped who you've become?
I think the big thing that I have learned through all of it and looking back is that even though it was hard, it has been kind of a gift. I had to be very strict about time, organization, taking care of people, things. And I used to resent that a lot, that people would look to me for that. But now, as a creator and a performer, it's kind of a superpower. And I think, we haven't touched on it too much, but the identity shifting of what it was versus what it is now and how it serves me rather than, and I still love being in service of other people, but not to the capacity where it's toxic. And I learned a very hard lesson this last year about overgiving and not realizing that I was. And, because I thought I was healed from that. And then I was like, nope, I was not. So I think that, like, making a map of the identity that I wanted, looking at the things that I used to think that were curses, like I've had people in shows be like, well, Molly's the responsible one. She'll make sure everyone gets to rehearsal. Molly's the one who's going to make sure this happens. Molly's going to make sure the one that happens. And it was toxic because of the people abusing that superpower. Now with Bad Blood Project, I'm in a group of people that are incredibly grateful, incredibly kind, incredibly thoughtful. And they look at that superpower and they don't abuse it, and they actually give back. Finding your identity outside of the eldest daughter syndrome and seeing what those things that maybe felt like a curse, how it can help you in the future with your actual dreams and endeavors, can align emotionally with and logically and practically with people that see that in you and go, I want to also give to her because I see her giving back. And identity shifting and seeing that really helped me. And I still kind of cower sometimes, and I still try not to make it too much about me, but having that huge support of people going, no, get out there, like, push, really does help. And I think I think that the challenge is really pinpointing that identity and really separating, because I think, and it is a work in progress. I feel like I'm always failing and I'm always succeeding, but I'd rather be failing and succeeding than always sitting in a shadow or staying still. Oh my God, I would die. Yeah. And I was kind of dying. I literally told my therapist, I don't know why I'm so happy. I used to sleep in a car. I was homeless for many years. I would eat cabbage and any, like, cheese basically for months on end because I didn't have a fridge and those things would stay. Like, and I asked my therapist at a certain point, I was like, I now have food. I have a roof over my head. I have a loving partner who doesn't force me or ask me to do things in ways that make me grow, but they're not harmful. I have everything that I ever wanted, and I still feel so miserable. And I'm going to cry. I told you I was going to cry earlier, but like, I felt so miserable. And I think it really, when we broke it down, it was because the part of me that always wanted to survive didn't want to die. and it needed to die in order for me to become new. And it is hard. It is so hard, but it is so rewarding when you finally look back. And it's been 2 years that I've been kind of on this identity journey. I was sitting so still that I couldn't breathe. And now I am messing up and I'm being messy and I'm succeeding in areas and I'm very uncomfortable in some spaces. And I still feel like I'm not even close to the top of that hill, but at least I'm finally on that journey instead of just kind of staying in this space that felt safe and just felt like, I'm just going to always be on that. I'm always going to work really hard and I'm never going to get anywhere. It was the worst feeling in the world. And I don't want it for anybody. Sorry. It's just like,
Thank you so much for just bringing that to the conversation, because we hold on to the parts of ourselves that feel safe in being unsafe. And it's really, really hard to move on from being kind of comfortable in that survival mindset. I know for myself, I've struggled with that. And I had to get to a place where I could accept that we can be thankful for the parts of ourselves that help us survive, that help us, stand in the face of trauma. But we also have to come to a place where we have to be ready to let go of continuing to perpetuate like something that isn't healthy for us. And I can totally understand why that brought up just so much emotion for you, because I can completely identify with what you're talking about.
yeah, no, I forget if it was her or if I heard this somewhere else, but it was nothing wants to die. So when you're at a point where your trauma is you're starting to really let go of it and see the cracks, it starts fighting even harder to be there. And I think I'm going through another phase of that where it's like, I've gotten to a point where I feel really good, but then, there's all these things coming up recently that it's like, oh, maybe I'm at that next step where I need to let this part of me go so that this part of the identity puzzle that I'm creating can be there. And something my therapist has said is she's like, can you ask it to let go? Say thank you for being there. Thank you for loving me, because it really is coming from a place of love. Like that part of you wants to protect you the way that you don't feel like you were protected in the past. And if you can let go of that and let them kind of just sit and be there just in case you need them, but like tell them that you got it, that's when it really truly feels like you're creating a new puzzle piece. And yeah, it's like we want to hold on, Jack. I never want to let go, but but she lets go.
That's so beautiful. You mentioned before this idea that you have gone through a huge identity shift and that there was an old Molly and you're stepping into a new Molly. What in your own words would be the difference between those two versions of yourself?
Old Molly was really reliable, true Capricorn, climbing, but never going anywhere. I used to think of it as this. I've had these nightmares where I'm in this room and it fills up with water, and there's this little crack that I keep breathing, trying to catch my breath in. I haven't had that nightmare in forever since I started doing this identity shifting work. It was really hard for me to start doing it. That's how old Molly felt. Old Molly felt like no one cared, no one wanted to help her. Everybody wanted a lot from me, but I could never, and not because of them, but I could never ask for it back because I was too afraid of what they would want back in return.
Yeah, that and not really knowing if you have the capacity to take on another burden. I think, especially when you're growing up in a situation where relationship really meant burden. And even though you crave connection, being in relationship with others starts to feel like an obligation is being created. And so then relationships start to feel really risky.
Yeah. And risky, I think, is probably like the best word I could put for me. It always felt like a risk, or that I would always be asked to do something. And if I didn't do it, they would abandon me. That was old Molly.
Yeah.
New Molly, or the current Molly, I should say, this version of Phoenix Molly, knows that's not the case. I understand that I'm really good at what I do. I know I'm a good actor. I know I'm a really good singer. I know I'm a really good writer. I know that I have the capacity to do a lot of jobs within my scale because I'm doing a lot of it for Bad Blood Project. And it's not a burden because of the people I'm working with. I'm happy to give, but I also have created a version of me that is allowed to say no. And I think as eldest daughters, we're so used to just yes, 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 yes. I need to help. I need to help. I need to do all this for my parents and for my siblings, for the survival of our clan. Now it's not a survival thing anymore. It's like I am more than happy to help someone with anything that they need, but there is a limit. And some of it is needs to be transactional. If it's going to take up too much of my time, it needs to, a barter or, payment or whatever, which was so hard. Money, it was so hard for me as a poor child, like my relationship around money and being okay with saying no. And this version is much healthier. I will say that. I am much happier. I have contracts that I have broken with people, said, nope, this is not good for me anymore. Yeah, there's a lot in this version, and being okay with being a little selfish, being okay with taking care of myself.
Well, to that end, maybe for eldest daughters who are listening, what would you want to say to them?
I love you. You're amazing. You have done so much for so long. And it's okay for you to take care of yourself. It really is. Whatever that looks like to you. You are so special and amazing. There are so many worlds in people's lives that would be crumbled if it weren't for how much you've given. And it's okay because they'll be able to figure it out now. You've done the work, and it's now, whenever you're ready, it's time for you to start creating your world, if you so choose to do. I really hope you do, because you are so amazing and you deserve all of that. I wish I could say more. I have like a million things to say to you, but like I feel like that that encompasses it. And then the Capricorn shield is down today.
Those are exactly the words that I know I needed.
Yeah, me too. I needed someone to tell me that. I also needed to hear it. And I never heard anyone say, I heard so many people saying good things to me, but I never received it.
Right.
I always felt like it was not for me, but those words are for you. I'm going to tell you that right now. I know you may not be okay with receiving it, but save unpopular decisions, and save this particular thing, because you deserve it. And when you're ready to hear it, you will hear it. Because I didn't hear it for so long. I had so many good people in my life telling me that all the time. Even, best friends, my husband, my sisters, and I never heard them until I finally started taking care of myself. And that's all they want. I just want the people who love you are going to want you to take care of yourself. The people who don't, they're not worth your time. They're worth somebody else's time, and they need to go on their journey, and they need to heal from whatever is going on with them. But that is not your job. That's why we have therapists. You get the Molly finger.
This conversation had so much richness and so much heart. And you really shared a gift with all of us, for our listeners. And I think also probably for your family and your siblings who are listening too, who need that message that you shared, but are also, I'm sure really inspired by all of the success that you've had really living in your truth. So thank you. And maybe then for our final question, what would you like to say to the haters, the people who maybe judge you and think you're being selfish?
I want to say this succinctly, so it might take me a second. I know that you've been on your own journey. If you look at me or any eldest daughter, and what I've said today may rattle you, I think that it needs to be a reflection on what you need to work on. If it makes you uncomfortable, if it makes you angry, if you think that women should always have babies, or if eldest daughters should always be in service of, it's okay that you have that opinion. You're allowed, but it's not my truth. And it was killing me, and it might be killing someone else. So just keep that in mind and understand that maybe that person is not meant to be in your life, not because they're being selfish or they're being hurtful towards you, but maybe they're trying to protect themselves. And every human being's journey is very different. And I will not judge your journey or your judgment on other people, but that is a part of your life that you need to figure out and not make the burden of the person that is trying to figure out theirs. And that goes for everything. It's really hard. I'm not saying it's easy. I do it all the time. I am not on a soapbox. I am guilty of doing it too. We all are. Like every single solitary one of us. I think that's a part of the human experience, is that we are all guilty of doing all of it. But I think that we need to say it, because I think there's too much, you should do this and you should do that and you should be this and you should be that. And I don't like this, so it's not a part of my narrative. So go fuck off. Or, this idea that everybody has to be the same in your world. It's so boring. It's so boring, and you don't learn anything. I've learned so much from so many people who have walked so many different walks of life, and I don't like some of the things they've done. There are people that I am just constantly around, and we have very different views on things. But the one thing that we do know is that we love each other. And so I think that for haters, why are you a hater? Why is that your label? Is it serving you? If it is in your world, okay. But that other person who's trying to figure out this shit, leave them alone or love them for being different.
Well, thank you again, Molly, for being on Unpopular Decisions. For all of you guys who are curious about everything that Molly is working on, you can follow her journey at mollygazay.me online and find all of her projects that she's working on, including her new book, Tales from the Edge, which will be released this summer. And you should also follow Bad Blood Project on Instagram. This is a vertical series that she's executive producing, directing, and starring in, along with yours truly. So I'm so excited for all of you guys to get to know more of her work, and we'll link all of that in the show notes. So thank you.
Thank you for having me and creating such a safe space, and, just being a light in the world and giving people an opportunity to have a voice and hear their stories.
If today's conversation sparks something for you, that's not an accident. You're not doing life wrong. You're doing life courageously. This is Unpopular Decisions, where we're talking about what it really takes to rewrite generational expectations and scripts. If this episode resonated, please share it with a friend who might get something from it, or leave us a review, because courage multiplies when it is witnessed. Thank you so much for listening, and I'm glad you're here.